If there is one thing that never ceases to amaze me, it is the similarities between mainstream Christianity and the message instilled in me by my abusive parents and brother. They would repeatedly tell me I did not have what it takes and I would never be good enough. The same message comes from mainstream Christianity. I don't have what it takes to live righteously, so I will never be good enough. The only thing I can hope for is forgiveness if I trust in Jesus and what he did for us at the cross. If the Bible could back up this message, I would be the first to accept it. But as you might have noticed in the Gospels, Jesus says things like, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect," and other scriptures that seem to say sinlessness is achievable and even expected. When these scriptures are confronted with the message in mainstream Christianity, they are often overlooked by mainstream Christianity or countered with scriptures of Paul that seemingly say the opposite. It has always puzzled me why we should put Paul's words over the words of Jesus Christ. After all, we are not Catholic, so we don't believe in the adoration of Paul as a saint. We are Christians who follow Christ, are we not? The key to unraveling this confusion that seemed to plague mainstream Christianity is to ask myself this question: how should I understand the term sinless? I had always been told sinless means to be perfect, and nobody in their right mind can claim to be perfect. Then, I had to ask myself a difficult question. Was Jesus sinless? I had been taught in mainstream Christianity that the answer was yes, he was sinless. But in the Gospels, I read a lot of stories about him where he did morally questionable things, like calling a woman a dog. So, if being sinless meant to be perfect, the answer would be that not even Jesus was sinless. But then I came across an idea I had not heard of before. The very definition of sin is a transgression of a divine law. So, if it is not a transgression of divine law, then it is not a sin, even though it can be morally questionable and repulsive. This made me understand that Jesus could still be sinless by never transgressing the Torah and still be ethically dubious. This made me rethink what it meant to be perfect. I understood that you could be ideal in the eyes of Jehovah and still be far from perfect in the eyes of your fellow man. So, in this way, it would be correct to say Jesus was sinless because he never transgressed divine law. But that made me curious. What does it mean to transgress divine law? As a mainstream Christian, I had learned it meant never telling a lie, never taking a life, always giving 10% of your income to God, never stealing, attending church, and so on. Back then, when I learned this, I rarely read the Old Testament, so I only based my knowledge of the Torah on what I was being told. When I read the Old Testament, I quickly realized how wrong many of my teachers were. I quickly learned in the Torah how we each day find ourselves in situations where we must choose between sins. This was no surprise because I knew very well how true that was. For instance, when you have to choose between telling the truth and hurting someone's feelings or telling a lie to protect someone's feelings, the Torah teaches that it is more important to protect someone's feelings than to tell the truth. And of course, sometimes there are incidents where you have to say the truth and hurt someone's feelings because you have to warn them and ensure nothing worse would happen to them. I now understand transgressing divine law was a requirement for remaining perfect in the eyes of Jehovah. So, if Jesus was a human being when he lived here on earth, he had to have made the same choices. And therefore, it would be correct to say he never transgressed divine law, even though he did. If this is what it means to be sinless, it is something I could relate to and something that was achievable and within reach for me. This was the total opposite of the message I had heard in mainstream Christianity and the total opposite of the message my parents and brother had instilled in me. For this was a God who said I was well able to make the correct choice each day and do the correct thing.